So so basically, all of us have been in NFTs for a long time. Actually, all three of you taught me almost everything that I know about NFTs. Wow. So yeah, we're gonna jam here. I'm just gonna try to keep it as casual as possible. I have a couple of questions for you guys. But first, maybe we want to start by you know introducing each other and how we came across NFTs. So yeah, I'm MP. I am in NFTs since 2018, and I came across them when one of the organizations that I worked for, Golem, was funding grants at ECF, and we actually funded Matt on with his grant at Excellent. So yeah, that's me.
Yeah, and you also wrote or co-wrote some very impressive papers on NFTs and the art market, which I think y'all talk about later today.
Yeah, we're gonna talk about it, but I wanted to say how I came across it. So yeah, you wanna continue?
Yeah, I'm Matt, one of the many. I'm Matt G. Condon on Twitter, and I showed up in the NFT world around CryptoPunks, sort of after the launch. So no Genesis claim for me, but then kind of dived into digital scarcity, and sort of once you realize that digital things can be owned and scarce, nothing else is worth thinking about. But yeah, it's good to see y'all.
I can go next. I'm not sure if this is like an official classification, but I did work on some counterparty stuff and Doge party stuff back in the day, and that's where I first came across what was then called colored coins, and I was like, this could also be used to represent like digital assets and digital collectibles. Obviously, back then it was like Rare Pepe was the popular ones, and then more officially in Ethereum space, it was with the Uja music stuff that I previously shared with the music badges. And then I launched one of my first NFTs in 2019, which is this artwork is always on sale, which uses Harbinger text to as a different kind of way to do patronage for artists. So yeah, that's a short history.
I guess that's me. I had a similar encounter with colored coins way back when, and was just like, oh my God, this is so hard to do. and basically dipped out of blockchain for like 2 years, and then saw my first like Solidity Hello World contract sometime in 2017 summer, and I was like, oh my God, it's time. I can build a me is able to like build a blockchain application. Wow, finally. And got really excited. I think CryptoPunks were selling for like over $20 at that point, which was way out of my budget. I did not think that was a good way to spend my money. I was at the East Waterloo hackathon where the CryptoKitties deployed on, I think it was just Rinkeby at that point, and there was a bunch of stickers, and the team built a really cool event tracking interface, which was really exciting, and really just sort of like reiterated that this stuff is working, this stuff is not going to go away. I think that the first real NFT project that I ever deployed to mainnet was actually ENS Nifty. That was before ENS was NFTs, and I made a wrapping service with Pedro Gomez at a ENS hackathon in London, and you could wrap your ENS as an NFT and be able to buy and sell it, which proved to be such a great idea that they implemented it in the core protocol, and it's very happy to see that happen. And that's my claim to fame.
Oh, thanks, Billy. So I have this prompt about different ways to see the creator economy and different stages. As Matt mentioned, I write papers about art and creators and NFTs. So in the effort of trying to make sense of the whole NFT boom, I try to contextualize it a little bit within the creator economy that started in 2009. And I actually like to call this boom as the creator economy V3, because I understand the first creator economy as that one where clicks matter and got monetized. Then maybe there's a weird V2 where influencers would advertise stuff and get paid in tea that makes you go to the bathroom, or in other assorted, very weird products, and even sound money. But this creator economy is actually different. We built the financial system first with Bitcoin, then we built the tools to power it with, for example, NFTs. And we're inviting other creators now to monetize and build the art and other exciting projects related to NFTs. So this creator economy is super different, and I call it V3 because it's a creator economy entirely built by creators for creators. I think that's a really cool concept. And, I like to ask other fellow pioneers that are also creators, because in a way or another, you're artists and writers and software developers and many mats. So what comes next, and what would you like to see in this V3?
Yeah, that's a great point about the sort of the stages of creator economy. And it does feel like a V3 that we're in now, where the difference is, I guess, within V2, it's this sort of like clicks, and the sort of the incentives that are proposed are like very you kind of see them bringing about the downfall of democracy kind of thing, where it's this like, you have to get clicks, you have to be you have to promote like excitement or rage or bad vibes or good vibes. Like, they have to be something crazy to get people's attention. And it's just like very you want a lot of people giving you a small amount of money via advertisement or whatever. And it feels like the V3 is this shift into like, maybe you have the 1,000 true fans thing, you use alternative funding models like NFTs, or just the sheer explosion in like non-advertising based models is like really exciting. And it does feel like a defined V3 of like, cool, let's create an entirely separate culture of how we interact with artistry and reward like things that make me feel good. And it does feel like a total shift. Yeah, things that I want to see are really just more experimentation and making the tools easier to use. Because I think that's the tough thing is, like I run a podcast about NFTs, but I don't issue NFTs of the podcast as like a collectible or anything, because it's just too much work. And it's like, yeah, even as like, I can't even dog food the own idea. I could, but it would be a lot of work. And so I'd like to see much more easier tooling for things like that.
I would, Matt, let me just say, I would love to get like digitally rare NFTs. I think you guys should launch some of those.
Yeah, we should do it.
Yeah, I think one thing that might be controversial is my perception on sometimes the difficulty with what copyright and intellectual property law looks like, and what I believe it could be in the future. Like in the music industry, we faced so many hurdles and difficulty with like trying to imagine a new future, but still having to get stuck in things like territorial rights, various different kinds of royalties that is not properly modernized for even the digital age, never mind like the Web3 era. And another example, the novel that I wrote, right? Here's something strange, not many people might know, but the novel I wrote, the copyright is based in South Africa because I wrote it in South Africa, and thus it's technically registered, or like it's classified as coming from South Africa. But because intellectual property is classified as capital in South Africa, I need to get permission from the Reserve Bank of South Africa in order to export the IP that I created in order to monetize it elsewhere. So I can't, for example, take the IP of my novel and put it in a US company. I have to get permission to do that. Like you have to go to an authorized dealer and like a Reserve Bank in order to get that. And all these kind of instances like frustrated me in terms of like, this is there such that it should serve the creator, but when it's at the cost or obstacle to the creator, I believe it's not the best solution. It should be a set of tools that if the creator wants to like keep their IP and stuff and exploit it for themselves, by all means do it, right? But I think one of the things that makes me excited about NFTs is that the value is funneled into the NFT sales, not the exploitation of the IP, right? So it doesn't successful NFTs doesn't necessarily require the creator to go, I'm going to put this behind a gated content. You don't have to pay me to view the content or to consume the content. Rather, that funnels where people pay directly for content comes with like additional value that's specific to the distribution channel. So another interesting example, like I use Amazon's print to order for my novel, and people are more than willing to pay that amount because they like to have a physical book, right?
Mhm.
But if they want to read it for free, they can also do that. So even though it's pay what you want, people are still paying to get the physical book. So it's like that constant frustration with the fact that sometimes I believe like copyright and intellectual property might be better served for some kinds of creators, such that they should make it public domain or CC4 or like just very permissive licensing, and funnel some of the revenue into subscription revenue or NFTs or other things. I think that's my sort of controversial take on like what I believe like this future should look like. But it shouldn't obviously be at the cost of creators that still want to exploit and own their own intellectual property. Yeah.
Yeah. That's
Well,
a great point about IP. Oh.
That's a little bit tied to actually what the first CryptoPunks were proposing, where they, were very explicit about the problems with intellectual property, and were encouraging people to just like cut the barbed wire, quote unquote, on that very problem. So if we keep building through that, and it's not controversial at all, actually, this is basically our our foundation.
Yeah.
So yeah. Billy, do you have any thoughts?
I mean, it gets into very philosophical territory. I was getting myself prepared to talk about something way easier, but it's I mean, it also sort of points to what's sort of at the core and liberating, I think, of all this, that it's, it separates the content from the idea of ownership, which liberates, the content in this really way. And once those are separated, then you can have really rigorous thought about each of those as separate things, which I think is sort of, what you're bringing up in these ways. And I don't think I spent enough time thinking about exactly how IP can change from today to be able to bring any value to that topic, but I really appreciate your else. I was going to say my thing that I really want to see is actually more interfaces. A blockchain doesn't need to be a blockchain unless there's a third independent party who can verify some aspect of it. And without that, it might as well be a fully mediated, centralized service, which has its place and are great for their own reasons. But I think we're all sort of excited about these public access APIs because of the fact that people can build businesses on them, and that things like Etherscan, I think, are what get me like really excited. You know what I mean? Like that's the proof that this thing is actually there. Like I can go to a disinterested third party who will present the same information that my primary source did. And that's the validation that I need to know that this is a public network. And we actually have very few sort of public service interfaces to NFTs. I end up using OpenSea all the time just to sort of check, does it exist? Who's the current owner? What does it look like? What does the metadata look like? Etherscan at some point had like early beta tests for images on NFTs, but they had requirements that they had to be served under 300 milliseconds or something like that, or else they wouldn't show them. And I don't know if they just pulled the plug on the whole thing or not, but like, it's definitely like, a desert when it comes to having like rich interfaces to NFTs across the space. And in preparation for today, I wanted to find a general use browser-based NFT wallet, and it doesn't exist. I couldn't find a single place that a user could just show up, see their NFTs, and transfer from one wallet to another. OpenSea ticks like all of these boxes except for the ability to transfer. And so mobile wallets are doing a pretty good job. MetaMask Mobile, Rainbow Wallet, I think even Status, you can look at NFTs and you can transfer them from there. And that's like the most basic interface. And that's the point of all following an interface, is that anybody should be able to like follow its standard, provide that interface. And I was blown away by the fact that even in this, peak of NFT hype, there's not a general use wallet. People, are they just not transferring them? Are they buying them and holding them? I mean, marketplaces are seemingly the only point of exchange. And one of the goals for this Kudzu project was to really get people actually transferring between wallets, like touch your neighbor, reach out, find out who you're going to send it to, surprise them or whatever. But it's a layer that seems totally underserved, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. Another of the problems that actually you also were intending to solve is, for example, if you are actually selling an NFT on Super Rare or something like that, then when it comes to the time of secondary sales, that goes well because, you do it in platform. But then, when there's nothing preventing the buyer from actually withdrawing it, taking it from from a platform and using OpenSea or another, and then sort of stripping the creator out of your royalties, which is a really important problem, because that implies a layer of trust in the platform, among the artist and the platform, that we don't really talk about. So I see transferability and better UX, and removing this kind of trust and just hard coding it in contracts is very important if we want the space to advance. Billy, maybe you can tell us more about that too, because I think that's very cool.
I want to be realistic about what you can get out of hard coding those things in contracts. And it's great to be able to provide platforms where that information, that traceability, can go back to the origin. But it's always going to be contextual. Like you can, or you should, or at least in a general purpose, virtual machine that's Turing complete, get around that. At the end of the day, you can always write a wrapper contract that's a wrapper contract for whatever it is. And rather than try to force somebody to do these sorts of things, I feel like there's other ways of encouraging it. So I think one of the standards that I saw recently trying to address this is that you basically provide the information inside the contract, and you make it a standard so that everyone knows where to look for who does royalties go to. And then it's up to each of those marketplaces to implement it themselves. You know what I mean? So like OpenSea has royalties built into every contract. If you're the person who deployed the contract, you can register and say, I get 10% of all sales. And I feel like that's the sort of opt-in thing that can be spread across every platform that should be more encouraged, rather than okay, you all have to use the same platform and that's the only way this is ever going to work. It just seems like impossible of a task to be able to capture that much and prevent from moving out, because that's also what makes these things interesting is composability and moving it out and doing it something that it wasn't expected to do in a new context that sort of creates such an interesting and creative fertile space.
Yeah, the standard for royalties would definitely be useful, and I think the point about it's more the social contract that's enforcing this more so than the literal code contract, and I think that's actually perfect and fine, right? It's the social contract of, hey, I'm supporting this artist, but if I go through the effort to go around it, well, now the people who care about that don't like me, and I think that's a valid enforcement. It's we kind of talked about that. Oh, go ahead, Simon.
Yeah, it's sorry to interrupt, but it's I think that kind of layer can function well enough just as a social norm,
absolutely.
and just contextualizing the stuff like even platforms can go, hey, the current owner, right? There's a red warning that says this owner did not pay the royalties,
right,
warning, this person is not conforming to expected social norms,
right, the norms of this society. Totally. Yeah, I think that's totally valid, right? Like with the NFT in my hand, there's nothing stopping me from sending the links out, right? There's a social contract of saying you have to meet me and scan my hand to get it, and that's totally valid, right? No one expects this to be resistant to government influence, right? Someone can kidnap me and scan my hand a bunch of times and cool, that's fine. No one's expecting that. Or no one's expecting me to defend
threat model.
Right, the threat model doesn't care about that. But yeah, I think that normativeness, the sort of social norms, and I guess that's the power of default, right? There's this sort of power of default as well, where it should be easy and natural for me to pay the royalties when I transfer this thing. And of course, the standard makes that way more interoperable between platforms. And there's a balance there between requiring it and just being look, it's easy to do.
Yeah. No, go ahead, Simon. Go.
Obviously, the alternative is to show this artwork is always on sale. It's in that case, there's always a smart contract that has a higher privilege to be able to take ownership away from other owners, and in that case, you can't build a wrapper contract. Because there will always be another smart contract that can take it away from the wrapper. So it might be that it could be some ways to do it, but in the case of harbinger tax, there's always a way to get royalties in this case. But obviously, it changes the ownership model. It's not
right.
Some people don't want to own harbinger tax NFTs because it's a bit more effort. So
it also changes the mental model of ownership, where
it does. Yeah. So it's a different feeling. It's a different feeling. Yes. Yeah.
Actually, to that feeling, one thing I wanted to mention about the creator economy that I think is is recognized but not really verbalized is that when you can own digital merch, that changes like at least my mindset of how I'm engaging with a creator. I like don't sponsor anyone on Patreon, not because I don't like artists, but because it just never made sense to me. But I would do the exact same thing if I got a memorabilia NFT, right? And I do that on the daily, right? I buy NFTs from artists. I want the Kudzu NFT as like this like memorabilia thing, this like locking in this tangibility of a moment in time and place. And it's like, I think that's under spoken about. I think it's just really powerful. And all of the models that maybe didn't work in V2 maybe can be reapplied with this concept of like, you get this worthless to the market NFT, but that changes the mental game.
Isn't that what POAP is doing?
Yeah, they're doing
They're very cool.
that for like places and being in a place, and I think that's fantastic. It's a really good idea. I think like the I also love the interconnection between non-monetary distribution of scarce things. You have to go to the music concert to get the thing. You have to be in New York at a certain time. It's like Pokemon Go style. Like I think that's vastly more interesting than selling things on, a Dutch auction or whatever. And there's like so many creative ways that like artists and creators can use this to like interact with their community. Maybe it's you're playing chess on Twitch and you have this amazing move. Someone can like snapshot that move, very clovery maybe, and so it's like this like game state. And then everyone who's in chat gets a little memorabilia, and it's worthless. It's just like I was there, right? But that's important, right? It's like you were there for the double bong cloud. It's 420. You were there for the double bong cloud. Like you get this like proof of you were there, and that's so tangible. It's so much better than just it disappearing into the ether, so to speak. And I think that's a really powerful effect.
Yeah, absolutely. I have to actually give a shout out here to Gitcoin. Whenever you fund something on Gitcoin, you actually get a kudos, which is an NFT, and that to me has great value. Of course, the UX could be a little bit better because you need to actually sign another transaction, and then everything is glitchy
Right.
as with everything else in Web3 platforms, and sort of like this Web2 mix up. But they are doing this for a very long time, and it's sort of a badge of honor as well.
Yeah, no, it absolutely is a badge, and I love that. I think it's one of the best use cases of digital ownership is this like memorabilia thing, and that is a good point. Is the sort of friction and expense of actually getting an NFT into someone's wallet is kind of painful. I think the future, especially for situations where it's in like a non-transferable or it doesn't make sense for it to be transferred, like it's just a digital memorabilia piece. I think there's a few mechanics we can use to like distribute an NFT counterfactually, let's say. So it's like you don't actually issue the transaction on chain, but you could, and so it's basically the same as if you owned it. And so like there's a lot of like ways to get around that, especially for this memorabilia case.
Yeah, I was actually gonna ask a little bit about UX for NFT minting and also interoperability, because from high level, when you're gonna mint an NFT on Zora, which is a wonderful experience, and I've tried it, I see that UX has improved so much. And you don't have to think about royalties there. You don't have to think about minting almost if you're not reminded by the very obscure gas prices.
Right.
But apparently we're still a little bit far from achieving great UX, even if it's a little bit better than most Web2 banks as well. So what is in your mind what you would like to improve on, like short term, to see more adoption, if more adoption is possible? Of course, it's crazy now.
Yeah, I'll let Simon and Billy chime in as well, but the short version of mine is I think counterfactual meta transactions are really underutilized, especially for NFT distribution, which is the idea that like you give someone a ticket or a check or like a cryptographically signed message that says you get this NFT in the future. You can always send it later, but you don't have to. And so I think that's a really like easy way to airdrop things to people. You could also pay their gas or something like that. And then identity is still very fragmented. And I think that is a super high friction situation where obviously at the end of the day, identity is portable between platforms, but the UX of like everything being on the same platform, which like is MetaMask, Wallet Connect, whatever, like the UX of like trying to use a DApp is surprisingly odd to like link your wallet. And I think that's still like could be better. And so once you have this sort of like very casual unified sense of identity, then the things you own become portable between contexts and between platforms and between like where you want to use them. And I think that's going to be a big unlock, and they already are. It's just feels high friction to me.
I think one can go that way, and just like, like there are certain UX improvements that can still happen and will happen in time. I mean, things are a lot better than it was already a few years ago. But the other solution is always just to also lean into the experience, which is, when you sign up on Mirror to create a publication, there's this whole like animation and the coin is spinning and explosions and stuff. You're like, this was great. Like I enjoyed the experience. Some user experience actually work by leaning into like having this journey be part of the experience. Welcome to the future. You're in Web3, blockchains, vaporwave, whatever. And to accept like until things get better, let's lean into the uniqueness of the experience. And I don't think many people have done that too much. Most people are trying to make it easier rather than an experience. But it should be interesting to see if there are more ways to experiment with that.
Yeah, just to go back quickly and give a shout out to Proof of Attendance Protocol. I think they've had a really great user experience for receiving for a long time. They utilized gasless transactions, ENS, one of the first sort of really seamless experience, I think, for collecting the NFTs. So really big shout out to them. And this, brings me back to this interface question again. It's like the underlying tech, the blockchain it's kind of as good as we're going to get, at least for Ethereum 1.x, like the standard, you know what I mean? Like there's incremental improvements for that for sure. 1155 has a lot of interesting things. But at the end of the day, it's the interface that is where we're going to see things really improve. So whether it's Mirror, embracing that and throwing up the explosions, whether it's just having, more places to view the fact that this token exists, or whether it's recognizing that, a voucher to redeem an NFT is as good as an NFT, or whether it's about, being able to show NFTs that exist on multiple blockchains, on multiple platforms in the same way that, you've finally abstracted it to a point that you're able to present it because you have all of the contextual knowledge to make that information rich, valuable, accessible. And I mean, it's a tough problem, and it's one that I think the blockchain world is sort of like schizoid about. It's like on one side, it's the worst user experience because it's like the heaviest load and the most awful stuff you have to deal with. Cryptography is hard, private key management. On the other side, you have like millions and millions of dollars being spent purely to make this really garbled, like underlying technology look slick. And so we have some of like the best, slickest, coolest interfaces like I've ever encountered on any web application in the world. But yeah, at the same time, you'll turn around and all of a sudden it's just like banging your head against the sharpest edges. So great work that's happened, a lot more to do, and it's only going to get harder.
I like that description because it's exactly like that sometimes, where it's just like, oh, why is it asking me to sign this hash? What is this hash now? And like so confused. But then you get to a Web 2.0 website and you're like, I have to create an account, and like what is happening here? Like why is it asking me for this random information? And when you get to adapt, just like sign in, connect, done, use, instantly done. So it's like worlds different experience sometimes. Yeah.
Totally. I'm really proud of the user experience on Web3, honestly. And now I'm like, why do I have to, verify my email? What's that? Why do I have to enter an email?
That's the thing, is it's really better sometimes. Yeah.
I know. Or log in and save my keys. No, I have MetaMask for that. I have a throwaway on MetaMask, and that's spectacular as well. So, I'm proud of us.
I agree. Yeah. I think that's one of the big unlocks of Web3 is we've shifted from this like Web 2.0, all of my data is like tied to a platform, to all of my data is tied to me. My identity is the source of truth for like proving that I'm me and the things that I own and the money that I have and all of this. And that like begets really good user interfaces where I can take my wallet, sign into a new thing, and suddenly all my stuff is there. You can't do that with like banks. You can't do that with Facebook and Twitter. Like you just can't. It's fundamentally not how the things are architected. And so like that identity centric interface feels like really, really good sometimes.
Totally. And another shout out to everything not exploding with the high influx of users, which is something that we would have never expected. I thought it was going to
Right.
blow up. Seriously, with DeFi, I was like, okay, this is the time. Then gas escalated to 1,000. I was like, this is the time. Didn't blow up. Now, doesn't blow up. Guys, we're building something really cool and that it works. So, shout out to that too. And let's talk a little bit about the community for our last question of this panel. So, of course, there's so many different things between the community where we all started and the community that we have right now. And probably, I would like to ask you how it changed, and don't say it grew because that's obvious. But what do you see by interacting with users and different community members?
I know we can't say it grew, but it has grown to the point that I cannot fully remember all of the things that are happening anymore, right? Like there are so many people doing so many different things that I feel like out of touch, and it's kind of wild for that to change. But yeah, to the point that it grew. Sorry.
Yeah, I agree with Matt. Like I sometimes go on these like follow clicks. I go to someone that I've never seen before, and they share stuff from their friends, and I click through a bunch of stuff with like 20 tabs of new things I've never seen before, and it's just really awesome to see. I think one thing that I always despise is like gatekeeping, and so I think to some extent there might be people where they're now going like, "Ooh, all these new people like shilling all these projects and like get away." Like no, it's just like come one and all, like let's share in this stuff and like have fun. I think that's still the most important principle. Like yes, people are making money now, and but let's still make sure that the space is such that everyone gets involved. Let's not gatekeep any people that are only joining now, or even, I mean, who knows, maybe now it's still super early, so let's get people involved in from different places. Yeah.
I feel like the most remarkable thing I can say is like the fact that like, so every single hackathon I've been to, there's been these like phenomenal ideas and phenomenal products, but they all rest on a premise which is not yet true. And that premise is like, this is a cool thing for a world in which there's people who have cryptocurrency and have a wallet and can access this application. And like, so you see these things, you're like, okay, this is great, let's do it. Why is it happening? It's like, oh, because we don't live in a world where people have crypto and like know how to manage a private key and know how to interact with this application that I just built that solves this really cool problem. But like, we're starting to get there. Like NFTs have been around for 2 years. We've gone through a boom and a bust cycle of NFTs. We're in a boom. Nothing's fundamentally changed about the technology. What's happened is that there's users, you know what I mean? It's the first time that there is enough people, community users, to like make these things run the way that we've all been like kind of hoping that they would from the beginning. And I mean, we're still not there. Obviously, it's a tiny fraction of the world who has the access to the funds or the knowledge or the time or the capacity or whatever it is to be able to really interact with these things. But like, even with this tiny increase, there's such a huge result in what's become possible, and the sort of, liquidity and just the volume of NFTs has been insane. And that's, I think, a direct result of finally having enough of an audience to make things work.
And actually, to your point, where people don't need to have crypto to get into it. For example, when it comes to artists, there are these amazing self-organized groups, like MintFund is one of them, where you can pop by their Discord and say, yo, I want to mint an NFT, and they might fund your gas, so you don't have to purchase any ETH before. So you're really like, if you try, of course, nothing is automatic, and you're not going to hit a faucet that funds your ETH, and you have to do a little bit of work if you want to make it happen. And you have to invest time and love and put a lot of effort into getting to know all these stakeholders within the community. But you can literally pop by a Discord and just get your gas funded, and that's super important as well. That didn't happen before because as Billy said, the products were targeted towards people that were already crypto natives. And now with the high influx of users, also very new users are funding those that come after them, and that's great. That also speaks about lack of gatekeeping when it comes to new people. And one of the other things that I would love that I actually wanted to highlight is, and that Matt actually highlighted before on his opening talk, is about how people help each other against these rumors and sort of fear mongering. You're gonna massacre trees, which is true, and it's an important conversation, but it's not as hyperbolic. Or it's a pyramid scheme. That was my favorite one, because you need ETH to get in, and I'm like, yeah, but that doesn't go, like, they need to understand the concept of miners as well, which we hope we saw. But these new people are helping each other, so yeah, that's fantastic.
And to that point, I think one thing that has changed between then and now is that I can say the word NFT and people get it. And I spent the last 3 years never saying the letters NFT, or trying not to, because as soon as you have to explain what the N or the F or the T means, like, you've lost them. It's over. Like nothing will happen anymore. But Saturday Night Live, all the articles, like, I can just say NFT now, and people know that that's a label for, well, there's a sort of confusion between like one-of-one digital art and digital objects as a general category. But like, you can just use the label NFT, and that's amazing. That's amazing. That's such a good foundation to start from, because now you can say NFT and someone understands, like, oh, I can own a digital thing. And that's fantastic. And so despite the fact that I still hate the acronym, I'm going to use it now because it's, Shelling Point. That's what we decided on. But yeah, it's like, you can't explain the N, F, or the T. It's a terrible acronym. But yeah, no, I think that's a big thing that's changed as well, as the sort of foundation of, cultural understanding.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, okay, we have one question, and then maybe we can just pass it on to Stina. That's going to be presenting the next section, and it's, what do you think about curation in the NFT space? I think that yes, please, and a lot of it. We have a lot of problem with discovery of NFTs and artists, and I work on that field. So yes, please. It's my answer to that.
Yeah. To piggyback on that, I think curation and storytelling, the sort of crafting of narratives, is going to be the number one, like, necessary skill for these like digital objects. And of course, everything's contextual, but we're going to have this like huge proliferation of content and everything, and it's just, and we already see it, and it's like, it's already too much. And curation is what gives things meaning. It's what provides context for something to be meaningful. And without that, it's just sort of a sea with like non-contextual, meaningless objects. But it's the narratives and the storytelling and the sort of grouping of things that gives them meaning. And so I think that's absolutely fundamental.
Yeah, I like MP's answer. It's just yes, more of it. Yeah, from like traditional kinds of curation to just publishing things that people need to see, and Web 2.0 and social media, to experimenting with DAOs and token economics, and maybe we can finally bring back TCRs and have fun with them. So yeah, bunch of stuff we can experiment with for sure.
Wow. Yeah, I might have a surprise for you very soon on TCRs. I just leaked some alpha, but I might have a surprise for you. Stay tuned, watch this space.
Oh,
how about you, Billy? What do you feel about curation?
Yeah, all that resonates with me. I think the only thing that I would add is what's great about having publicly available ledger with all of these data points able to be analyzed, and in a world that big data becomes more and more important. All of that is useless without the story that represents that data. It's a bunch of points on a graph until somebody says, "What am I looking at?" And so even curation that's informed by data points and composed of massive amounts of statistics still requires curation. And there's no such thing as like objective data. It's always up for interpretation and the story and the spin that's delivered to it, and that's for better or worse. You know what I mean? But not going away. And if anything, going to become more important as there's more data, there's more things to process, there's more need for curation and more need for stories to contextualize and synthesize and understand what the hell are you even looking at.